Hey everybody, and welcome. In today's video, we're gonna talk about what is Chaos Vantage and should you add Chaos Vantage into your bag of skills, so to say. Now, the first thing is that Chaos Vantage is a solution for real-time visualization on your projects. It means that whatever you've been working on in 3ds Max with V-Ray, you can use Chaos Vantage to instantly get feedback on your work. Now, the go-to software for real-time visualization has more or less shifted more towards Epic's Unreal Engine. But the problem with this is that, well, it has a steeper learning curve, and when people are starting to learn it, if they are not really going to go deep on it, they kind of shy away from this. And this kind of goes towards interior decorators and architects. So people generally who have a specific niche they need to fill in, and they don't need everything that comes with Unreal Engine 5. So this is where Chaos comes in with Vantage and fills this specific need perfectly. And in this video, we're gonna see how it works and how easy it is to get some amazing results very fast. So let's just jump into it. For this, I'm going to use a very simple scene that we have over here. And now, once you install Chaos Vantage, you're gonna have these 4 buttons appear in your 3ds Max. The first one that we're gonna look at is the first button that says initiate a live link to Chaos Vantage. As soon as you click this thing, it will set your rendering to going to V-Ray GPU, and you can open Vantage like this. Now, this is what you're greeted at. Now, let's see what we're looking at in here. The first thing that we have over here is the button that says pause rendering. Now, like I said, this is a real-time rendering solution, and it always just renders. On the lower part, it will tell you what kind of a GPU you're using, what is your FPS, and how much visual RAM you're using for your scene. The other thing that we're going to look into right now is the camera options that you have. Now, with the live link, there are some limitations because you can just look at everything that's in the scene, but if you want to change something, you still have to go back to 3ds Max and change it over there. But for now, let's just look into the basic things that we can do. We have resolution preset. Now, this resolution is the resolution on our viewport, not the final render that we're going to do. So here we can change this resolution to whatever we want, or click next to it, we see the options. I'm actually going to unlock the aspect and just put this thing to 1000 by just 1000. I need it to be at a square. Now you're going to see that this is black because, well, I turn off the rendering. So if I click it back on, well, it gets back into rendering this scene. Now, what I'm seeing in here, it just keeps rendering all the time, and by just right-clicking here, I can actually look around into my scene. And just like in a video game with a W, A, S, and D, I can move in my scene, and I can position with the Q and E. I can go ahead and increase the height of the camera or reduce it. And you're going to see that it's very, very intuitive. It's very easy to set it up, and you can see multiple angles of your scene. Even if I look around like this, we're going to see that, well, this room wasn't really made for anything else other than just getting a render of this piece over here. Now, just like I said, on the first option where you have the live link, all of the other things in here are not actually usable. We're going to see how we can use them later on. So the first button that I just said here is where you start your rendering. Now, if I come next to this piece over here, you're gonna see that, well, the leaves are not perfect. In order for these leaves to appear right, they need to have an opacity map. And the way that this thing is done, you have to go on the second button here where it says enable disable rendering of opacity maps, or you need to go into your render setup here, go into advanced and click opacity maps or clip mode. So for now, I'm going to switch back to camera and click here. And now you're going to see that it will treat the opacity maps properly, and whatever foliage you have in your scene will actually look right. So I'm going to go back again here and see what else we can do in the camera tab. Now from here, what else I can change is I can change the movement speed of the navigation, like you saw right here that we're moving. So in a small room like this, going with a speed of 1.5 meter or 1.5 meter in a second, that's not a problem. But when you have large scale scenes, and that's the funny thing, you can import very, very large scenes in Vantage. It will deal with them without a problem. You can import scenes of exteriors that have millions or billions of polygons, instances, forest pack, pro, grass, no problem. Everything gets imported right away, no problem whatsoever. So this is something you can change. You increase it to 5-10 meters per second depending on what is the size of your scene. Now, another thing that you can change here, you can change the field of view, which is going to change your camera look. So if I go to 40, you're going to see different. If I go to 60 or even 90, now you're getting that fisheye lens look. This can be an interesting, artistic approach if you have to render a small room and you want to make it appear larger, but for all intents and purposes, I'm going to stick to around 40 to 50, like here, and use this thing. Then another thing that you can also change here is you can play around with the exposure of the film speed ISO. So if I go to increase this thing to, let's say, 2000, you're going to see that the scene gets darker. If we go again to, well, 4300 as it was, we get back to the original one. Another thing that we have here is also the ability to use depth of field. Now, depth of field in this scene will not really be that visible, but let's look at how we can do this. Now, we can have a focus distance where we can choose how far this thing is going to focus on, or by just clicking over on this button where it says pick focus point, you can click and actually choose where the focus should be. Now, once you do this, another thing you can change in here is by clicking next to the depth of field, you can change the aperture size. We need to turn this thing on, and from 7 millimeters, if we increase this thing to, let's say, something like 50 millimeters, what you're going to notice is in the background here, everything gets blurry. So now it's focusing here, and everything in the foreground is getting blurry. So by just clicking on this focus point, it will actually make it so it focuses on this item. So like I said, everything gets blurry except this. So if I turn depth of field again, same thing. Now you can actually see the difference. Now, having said this, another thing that we should mention is that you have the ability to go, this is everything from the camera. You have the ability to go into post-production, and here you can play around with how much you have highlight burns. Like, for example, if I look at here, I might actually not like to have this much of a burn. So I can decrease this thing and get some of that color back in my scene. Or I can increase the contrast here and get more contrast between the shadows. Also playing around with the exposure around until I get that perfect look that I'm going for my scene. So these are very nice things to have right within or inside the software. You can also play around with tone mapping this thing. You can use your own LUTs if you have LUT files, adding in bloom effects, hue saturation, and chromatic aberration. All of these are within the software. And last, you have the render here, and that is where you can actually just go in and set up more or less the physics on how everything works. Like we saw in the beginning, you can this is where you toggle on the opacity maps, which is basically this button, and you can also choose how many bounces you have for refractions, reflections, and GI. Now, these are the base options for what you're seeing here. On this side, we also have a bunch of different options, but these are fairly limited because we are still in the live link thing. And by being in the live link, it means that if I want to see some changes in here, I would need to go inside my 3ds Max. For example, let's say I select this light, I turn it off. Now if I go back to Chaos Vantage, you're going to see that it's actually dark. I no longer have that light. But in order to turn it back on, I need to go back in 3ds Max, and that's how I get to work with this. So I'm going to stop this, and let's go and actually show you how we can use Chaos Vantage, but without actually being in the live link, but have all the control be switched over to Chaos Vantage. If we want to be able to use all of the options of Chaos Vantage and make all the changes within the software, what we need to do is we need to import our scene into Vantage. And this is actually very, very easy to do. All you got to do is, instead of just clicking on the first button where it says initiate the live link, the button next to it will send your static VR scene to Chaos Vantage by just clicking on it and giving it 1 second to finish up. And as you can see, it did it right away. I'm going to change this thing again to have my square ratio to 1000 by 1000, and there we go. By just doing this thing, now I have much more control over this scene. So by clicking here or select, now I can select individual things within this scene. And if I go on the right side, you're going to see where it says objects. Now you're going to you'll be able to see a list of every single object and lights in your scene. And from here, I can hide or show them back again. In my scene in here, at the moment, the lights are lighting my scene with the help of this light that's placed at the door here, and I have another one filler inside right here that I can actually move around. And just like in 3ds Max, you have the same movement shortcuts. You have Q, W, E, R, and S for snapping. So by just moving this thing with this thing, you can actually see it's moving in real time. If I go ahead and select these curtains, you can see the feedback right away on it. Actually, I want to go ahead and just decrease my highlight burns a bit. There you go. Tone it down. And for this one, I'm actually going to select my lights for now, both of them, and I'm going to turn them off. Now, when you turn these off, what you're going to notice is that this thing is actually still lit up, and that is because, well, Chaos Vantage does a great job at using emissive objects as well. So on this plane, I actually have a texture, and that's being used as an emissive texture. That's why you can see this is an exterior that's pretty well lit up. But in my case, I actually do want to turn everything off so I can show you how the environment or the lighting modes work here. Now, by default, your main objects will use the texture when you export out of 3ds Max, but you can change it from texture to physical sky. Now, when you do it to physical sky, what it will do, it will give you a blue tint that is, well, more synonymous to a blue sky. And the interesting thing here is that when you turn this thing over to a physical sky, what you have the ability to do is actually turn on another option in here that says enable clouds. Now this is a very interesting option because when you enable the clouds, you get a slew of different things that you can also do and get a very interesting look depending on what kind of a feel you want to set up for your scene. And you can get some very interesting clouds for your exterior or interior for this thing. But now what you're gonna notice is also that our scene is a bit dark. And what we can do to remedy this is we can either turn on some of our other lights that we have in the scene, or we can use the Vantage default sky option. Now when we turn this thing, or the default sun option, when we turn this thing on, it's pretty much just like if you were using a V-Ray sun light. The way it works, you have this altitude and you have the azimuth. So the azimuth is literally how much you're going to rotate this thing, and the altitude is how high the sun is going to be. So the higher it is, the shorter this thing is going to be. And also another thing that you can change here is the intensity of the sun, as well as the size of the sun. Now for this one, for the size multiplier, if you increase it, what you're going to notice is that the shadows will get blurrier, which is kind of, well, the normal thing. The smaller a object is in 3D, the sharper the shadows is going to cast. So in this case, by making the sun larger, we can have these very nice diffused shadows. But still, my scene is a bit, well, dark. So for this one, what I can do is I can increase the ambient a bit. So let's go to 0.03. There we go. And also I can increase the intensity of the physical sky. So this is going to give me a bit more light. But still now, if I want to further light up my scene, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn back on one of my lights in here, the V-Ray light that I had for the outside. Now I can see that I have much more light in here. But also at the same time, I want to push it back just a tiny bit. There we go. And this should be enough. There we go. So we have more light coming into my scene. Now another thing that I can also do here is I can change how all of these options in here are actually shown. If I click on the compact, it's going to tell me all of my lights in my scene and what is the intensity of them. So I can on the fly increase or decrease how these things look. So it's just like the light lister in V-Ray. If I turn back this one, it's going to give me this extra fill light that I have in my scene, but I don't actually need this one. So I'm going to leave it like this. And by just controlling this slider, I can control how much of that light is going to enter my scene. So these are the options for your lights. They have the options to also change the materials on the fly here. So all of these are with the materials that came inside with the scene. And the other very interesting thing here is that when you're using Chaos Vantage, what you have the ability to do is use one of its most powerful features, and that is the same feature you have in 3ds Max, and that is the ability to use Chaos Cosmos. So by clicking on Chaos Cosmos, by just tapping it, you're going to be greeted by this window on the side. As soon as it loads up, it will give you access to all of the assets and materials that are available so you can use them into your scene. Now, what this means is that it will give you some incredible ability to change things on the fly. So for example, let's say that we want to add some more details to this scene. So let's go and try to find a rug like this. Okay, you can see some of my rugs that I've actually downloaded so far. So let's use this number 6. So just click and drag. And you're gonna notice is as soon as you click and drag, it will actually stick to any surface, and depending on where you want to put it. So in my case, I actually just want to put it on the floor. So click and drag, and right away you have this thing in here. Now scale it and just put it in the position where you want to have this thing. Now, here's the other thing. When you're using the scale or the move, you have the ability to just move it on a couple of different axes. You can move it up and down on individual axes, or if you click on the square here, you can actually snap it to surfaces like this. In my case, let's just put it in here. I actually like how this one looks, so let's leave it here for now. And let's select everything in here. That's fine. And move it slightly up. Actually, no, just leave it there. Okay, so we have this option where we can add additional items, and also we can choose some of the materials in here. So let's go in here and just type in glass. Now, in the glasses, you're gonna have an ability to choose, and for example, let's say glass tinted gray. By just clicking on it and dragging it into your scene, you're gonna see how this thing is going to look even before you drop it onto the model. So if we put it here, you can see now reflections on this glass. This is a properly made glass model, or a properly made glass material, and it looks really, really good. Especially if you come next to it, you're gonna see all the reflections and everything. Then let's try and change some of the other features here. Like we have some wood, so let's go back to wood. We have a lot of different woods here. Just get close to it, and let's go with maybe something dark. And if you want to get any of the models, just click on it and it gets downloaded, and now you can just click and drag on top of whatever you want to create. For example, like this, and now we have a nice dark cupboard instead of the white one. Let's go back, and for example, get out of the materials, just add additional 3D model, some accessories. Let's try decorations. There we go. Let's go for something that would stand well on a wall. Maybe like one of these pictures. So print with frame, that's fine. So click and drag it on the wall like this. And right away you have a very nice look for your frame, or for your rendering. As you can see, it stays flush on the wall. Let's just move it up a bit so it's not in the way of the plant. There we go. So we have furnished our scene a bit. It's getting to a point where it's more interesting, and as you can imagine, this is a very powerful workflow to be able to change everything that you want to change, with the Chaos Cosmos browser being available for whatever you want to do with it. And the last thing I actually want to cover before we finish with this video, because we've been going on for a while now, that is the ability of Chaos Vantage to deal with animation. It's actually pretty simple to do it. All you gotta do is just choose what kind of an animation you would like to have. For example, let's say the simplest thing, just a slow rise. So what you do is you set up the camera wherever you want to have it at. You click on this button right here, and it will create a new camera. Then just hold it down to maybe like this, where you want to end this thing, and just click one more time. So now you have two cameras in here. You go in, you create, click down here where it says animation, And what now you can do is you click on this plus, it says insert camera, camera 1. Next to it, again, insert camera 2. And this is as simple as it gets. Right clicking here, you can choose what is the duration of this animation is going to be. Let's say 5 seconds. At 30 frames per second, you click OK, and now you have a very simple 5-second animation. If I click here, you can see this thing just rises up. But you're going to notice is that it kind of starts slowly, then speeds up, and then slows up down again. This is because the transitions are in and out quad. So what you want to do is, if you want to have a linear thing, you just click on linear, and now the transition is going to be the same thing like this. Very simple, very easy, and very intuitive on how you can do it. And the great thing about this is that you can also incorporate this thing with multiple cameras. So let's say we added another one. We just click on this plus again, insert camera, camera 3. And let's say that this thing is again the duration of another 5 seconds. So once we go ahead and run the full animation now, it will actually go from the beginning of this thing. It will rise up, and then it will try to shift from this camera down to here. There we go. So like I said, very, very simple and fast way of doing this thing. And the great thing is that on all of these cameras, you have individual settings that you can change. You can use depth of field, you can use different fields of view, and you can get some very, very interesting end results. And once you're actually happy with what you have done, what you need to do is you click here where it says high quality render. And when you're at high quality render, this is where it's actually important what kind of preset you're using. You can have a sequence, or you can have a still image. In this case, what you want to do is also click on this button right here, and then choose where you want to save the output. And the output here is very simple. It will render all of your frames as images, or you can use them or you can export out as an MP4 or MKV file. In my case, I actually do choose to go with images, where I can take all of those different frames and then put them together as an animation in another software. So once you have this, you can just choose to have a JPEG or a PNG file. And as soon as you click on start, this will start rendering all of those frames that you can later on use as an animation or pretty much anything else. So I'm going to click here, get back to my scene. More or less, I hope you guys had fun and you did manage to learn some new tricks out of this video. If you would like to support me, you can click the join button, and the direct links will be in the description below. There's also a thank you button underneath every video on the channel now, so you can use that as well. And as always, the most helpful thing you can do is just click the like and subscribe button if you haven't done so yet. And well, as always, thank you very, very much for watching, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye-bye.